everyone. Welcome back to Sense of Self. I'm your host, Dr. Gowri Aragam. My guest today is Erin Gums, a certified coach and breathwork guide, and the founder of Tap Into Your Wellspring. One of the first things that will strike you about Erin is how deeply soulful she is, kind-hearted and grounded in a way that puts you at ease. But getting to that groundedness was not a straight line, and that's the story that she tells today. Erin grew up in Oakland, California. Intelligent, perceptive, surrounded by a large extended family with deep roots and strong opinions. She was wired for connection and sensitivity in a world that didn't always know what to do with that. And then something happened that fractured everything. I won't say more than that here because the way Erin tells the story is something you need to experience for yourself. What I will tell you is that this episode is ultimately about a question so many of us carry quietly. Do I have to keep living the life I was handed, or do I get to choose something different? Erin chose differently, and what I love most about her is that the very thing that made her so easily hurt for so much of her life, her sensitivity, her depth, her ability to feel everything, is the thing that she reclaimed as her greatest gift. So many of you are going to recognize yourself in this conversation, not in the specific details necessarily, but in the feeling of being caught between the family you came from and the person you're becoming, of loving people who've also hurt you. But before we begin, a quick heads up. This episode includes discussions of childhood sexual abuse and family trauma. So please take care of yourself as you listen. And if you or someone you love is struggling, please reach out to the crisis helpline by calling or texting 988. This is a profound, beautiful, and deeply human conversation, and I'm so honored that Erin trusted us with it. So get comfortable and let's get started. Sense of Self is a podcast exploring the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, where those stories come from, and what it looks like to reclaim them. I'm Dr. Gowri Aragam, a psychiatrist, and each week, I sit down with powerhouse women of color to trace their origin stories, explore the moments that shaped them, and uncover the transformations in those narratives that made them more fully themselves. Because when you hear someone else reclaim their future, you start to realize that you can reclaim yours too. And just a quick note before we get started. What you're about to hear is a real honest conversation, but it's not a substitute for mental health care. Our guest came into this conversation on her own terms, sharing only what she chose to share, and has had the support of therapy or coaching either currently or in the past. Hello, welcome to Sense of Self. It's so lovely to have you here. Would you mind just sharing with us your full name and where you grew up?
Thank you so much for having me. Sure. My name is Erin Nicole Gums, and I grew up in Oakland, California.
Awesome. And Erin Nicole Gums, is there any special significance to your name?
One thing I know that's unique about my name is my mom decided to spell the Nicole with a K. So that K gives me a little bit of uniqueness. It definitely stands out. I feel like I run into people that I haven't seen in years and they say like, "Hey, Nicole," and I've never once introduced myself that way. So I don't know, there's something there. But yeah, it's part of my sort of signature. And then, yeah, my brother's name starts with an E and ends with an N. So I think my parents wanted to like have a cute, little pairing there. So they chose the name. Otherwise, I don't really know if there's any direct, and I think there is a larger meaning of, I think it means like from Ireland, but I have no ties. So
Yeah, fair enough. No ties. And I think you mentioned your brother's name is a family name.
yes, yes. And it's a 5 generations now that I'm aware of that have that name. So it's very rooted in tradition, and that was really a part of like growing up. The like kind of ethos of our family was very like we care about our lineage and our history and being part of this big family. And yeah, so it's my dad's side of the family. Both sides are very large, but I grew up really around my dad's side of the family, all based in the Bay Area.
Yeah, so tell me more about them. So it sounds like you have one brother.
Yeah,
Is that
I have an
right?
older brother, 7 years
And
older than me. So it's just the two of us. Our family unit is like small comparatively. And my mom is one of 9. My dad's one of 7. So a lot of cousins, lots of aunts and uncles. Growing up, I had 20 first cousins.
Mhm.
And so it was just a lot of people all the time, a lot of memories at my grandparents' house. We grew up going to a church that was right across the street. I wouldn't say particularly religious, though maybe different parts. So I think my grandparents were pretty religious, but it was more of like a community center. It was where we did a lot of activities. I grew up doing African dance. We would learn that at the church and then go and perform. So a lot of time with family, a lot of time with a whole lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it sounds like
Yeah.
it. And can you share more about your parents' background?
Yeah, for sure. So my dad is Black, African American. My grandparents came from the South originally. So grandmother from Louisiana, grandfather from Texas, and they moved to California when they were teenagers. So to Berkeley and Oakland, and really as part of the Great Migration, a lot of African American families were moving to northern cities or to the West
Hmm.
Coast for just greater opportunity. I don't know a ton of like the details, but I do know that my great grandfather was really involved in like agriculture and
Hmm.
really helping people to improve their crops and things like that. And I think from the story that I know, like the tales, the lore is that he was helping a lot of folks, and some people didn't like that, and so he had a target on his back, and so he left and sort of fled the South to save his family, and so he came to the Bay Area, and that's where my grandparents met. And my mom's side of the family, my mom is Chamorro, which is indigenous people of the Northern Mariana Islands. Guam is maybe an island that folks are a little bit more familiar with, but both territories of the United States. So she grew up, born in Saipan, grew up in Guam,
Hmm.
and was there until she was about 19 and moved to California. So she's one of 9 siblings, so I have a ton
Hmm.
of family still back in the islands. So culturally, I grew up, mixed race,
Yeah.
but really largely culturally identified with my Black heritage because that's the family that I grew up around, who's like more kind of commonly, available to me in terms of having friends of that background. I didn't really know many folks outside of my mom.
Yeah.
I maybe had like one cousin in the area, but I didn't know many folks from that side of my culture. And so definitely been learning a lot more about it and getting more in touch with my roots as an adult. But it was more just like the food, and I would hear my mom speak her language to, it's called Chamorro again, but she would speak Chamorro to like my aunts and my grandmother, and my grandma on my mom's side was in the Bay Area until I was probably like 5 or something. So
Hmm.
I have very few memories, but she was around. And so, yeah, fond memories with them.
Yeah. So a lot of your family in the Bay, were you the only person of mixed heritage in that gigantic
Yeah.
extended family that you just
in
described?
in our generation, yeah, me and my brother, yeah, it's just us. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? I think growing up, I guess born in the 80s, late 80s,
Yeah.
I don't think it's all that uncommon, especially in the Bay Area. There's a lot
Hmm.
of like interracial couples and families, and yet somehow in my generation, again, of the 20 of us, just me and my brother were mixed. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. It's a kind of delicate thing to talk about in that I think a lot of the conversation around being mixed, especially growing up in the Black community as well,
Hmm.
because our history in this country is that, there's a thing called the one drop rule. So if you have one drop of Black in you, you're considered Black. And that's obviously, there's some roots of that are really not good and
Yeah.
really rooted in, white supremacy, if like you're sort of like tainted or if you were mixed race. But not being mixed with white, it's, I think a lot of times a conversation when I talk to people that are mixed, it's kind of like, oh, I have a white parent and I have a person of color as a parent. And
Yeah.
that wasn't really my experience, right? Like both sides of my family were, people of color. And so we just had like different cultures, different heritage. And so it was more of a conversation, I think, among strangers. I experienced a lot of questions just from people, like even on the street, being like, what are you? Like, what's your nationality? And I was just like, I'm American, and that's a whole nother thing. But I think there's this desire and this need to be kind of categorized and put into a box like, oh, I see that you are presenting as Asian or Black or Hispanic, what have you. And then I can like, I've got that, then I can continue on this conversation or I can
Yeah.
carry forward or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. So it
Yeah.
was something that sort of came up for me as like, all right, this is something that other people find kind of confusing. And so I don't remember my own internal state of being confused. I do more so remember the feeling that, and I still have this feeling of like, I know that other people aren't going to necessarily understand who I am culturally when they first see me. And so therefore there might need to be some sort of conversation. I'd say I can't give you, like, obviously I don't have stats on this, but I think the majority of Black people that meet me know that I'm Black, but then there are some that have like no concept, I have no idea, right? And so I've had all of those experiences, right? And I think people that aren't Black, like, I don't know what they think, and they'll ask me at some point in the conversation. And so, yeah, I think it's been an interesting thing to navigate. Definitely recognize the privilege that comes with that in the way that I present as this racially ambiguous person, the privilege that comes with that, I really started to understand that as a young adult, and how I presented myself in like the workplace, for example, but I won't get too ahead of myself. But yeah, I think I don't remember feeling like confused about it, but just knowing that other people would have questions that I then might need to answer, that I recognized other people in my family, for example, like didn't have that.
Yeah, and I think that naturally ends up creating this sort of external, not preoccupation, but you're very aware of what's outside of you, and you're very aware of how you present yourself for the sake of another person. And so that makes you wonder, how would you describe yourself, Erin, when you were that age navigating all of this? How did that maybe impact how you showed up in your family, with your friends, in the world?
Yeah, I do think that sums it up pretty well, as I was hyper aware of how I was being perceived or being received by others. I was a very curious child. I was a very precocious, very silly, very playful kid, and also extremely sensitive. Like, I just always had like really big emotions. If you're into astrology, I'm a Pisces, like through and through, like definitely, could cry at the drop of a hat. It was just like really like a big feeler, right? And,
Mhm.
I don't know how much it's just a generational thing, but my parents weren't really that well equipped at dealing with that. My
Yeah.
dad, especially, like men were not taught to like deal with emotions well. I think my mom had a lot of emotions herself, and I think maybe I felt like there was really only room for hers in the house. And so I think as a kid I would describe myself as like just really trying to like navigate and try and like make people feel happy and feel good and create a sense of peace and harmony. So I definitely saw myself as sort of like the peacekeeper. And I wouldn't say like I was like a jokester by any means, but I was very silly. So I think I would try and bring kind of some lightheartedness
Yeah.
if I wasn't crying. So one of those,
It's like laughing or crying. It's like either one.
It's always going to be as expressive, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, very expressive.
Yeah, I like that. I like that word to actually capture the whole
Yeah.
experience. No, that's fair. And how did you make sense of your mom in this large family? Because it sounds like she was the only person who is not Black. Did you realize that at the time? Was that brought to your
Um,
attention? Was it more in the background for you?
I think it was always in the background, but my mom's got a very strong personality, so she kind of made her presence known. She was very much a central figure in the family. She was very close with my grandparents. She is a great cook, like great host. So like she was a socially like a central figure in the family. So
Hmm.
that part felt like she was a part of it. There were
Yeah.
moments, and I will go ahead and share here a big part of my story, and it's can be very heavy to talk about, but it's a part that I have really come to know that was just a crucial thing for me to work through and to be
Hmm.
with, as it shaped so much of my experience. So prior to getting into that, I do remember one time where, among family, we were talking perhaps about some conversation was being had about like white people. I don't really remember what was being talked about whatsoever, but I remember a little cousin of mine being like, shh, we can't talk about white people because Auntie Vicky's here, and I was just like, my mom's not white. Like, I don't know what you mean by that. But so that also came up another time, right? Like, I think this sort of
Yeah.
idea, kind of back to my previous point about to whatever extent they're related, like the one drop rule being like, you got a drop of Black in you, you're Black. If you're not Black, I don't know if there was just like this weird understanding that was, if you're not Black, then you're white. And in some ways, that kind of came up a little bit, and I hadn't really connected those dots until now. I would say when the bigger piece, like bigger, like more traumatic piece that happened was I experienced sexual abuse in my family when I was very young,
Hmm.
my cousins. And I spoke up about that when I was 10 years old. And I
Hmm.
was, thinking about it now and all the work that I've done to move through and heal from that. I'm just so
Yeah.
proud of myself for speaking up. I know there's so many people in the world that maybe will never feel safe enough or, think that it's appropriate for them to share that. And
Hmm.
I feel it's important for me to speak about it on my behalf, the behalf of that little version of me, but also on behalf of so many people that share a similar experience, but perhaps don't feel that they can share it with anyone, right?
Yeah.
And I understand a little bit of why, because while my parents did their very best, I think, there's no playbook for that. When you hear that, I can only imagine how devastating that's got to be to hear that from a little girl. And they, tried their best to support me in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think knowing what I know now, my extended family, again, imagine these big moments. We were always at my grandmother's house, all connected. That, after I shared that news and my parents tried to like navigate, well, what do we do about this? Like, this is our family unit. Folks are pretty triggered. Folks are pretty scared and dysregulated. And that's with so much compassion at this point that I have for them, right? And
Yeah.
they were not there for me the way that I needed. They did not show up for that little girl the way she needed. They were too much in their own stuff. So there was a fight that happened that day. That was the first time I think us all being together again after
Yeah.
the news came out. And I really interpreted that as it is not okay for you to speak up, even if something is like, at least I knew, again, I was very sensitive and I knew right from wrong, right? I knew what happened to me was not okay. And I knew that I needed support and I needed help, but to have the reaction be, we're going to fight each other instead of addressing what happened to you. I did in my 10-year-old brain take on like, oh, maybe it's not safe to speak up. Like maybe your needs don't matter. Maybe what you think is wrong, like maybe you're not correct about that. Right. And so
Yeah.
to bring it back to that full circle, as we were leaving that day, we were
Hmm.
getting ourselves out of the melee. It's the word that comes to me. One of my aunts screamed out after us, get out of here. And she referred to my mom as white. Again, in that moment, we never wanted you here anyway. And it did really hit home that, I was a product of these two people that came together. And that if you didn't want her, then you never wanted her children. Like you never
Hmm.
wanted her either. And so it's definitely something that was very, very hurtful to hear and to experience and to go through. And also just think about like how much my family members were just unequipped to address so many moments and experiences of harm that they either caused or experienced, and that they never had the tools or the ability to like receive the kind of love and protection that they so needed. So they couldn't possibly give that to me. They couldn't model what I needed either. And so I took from that experience, right, like so many things, and we'll get into, but at this point, definitely like I've got to show up for the people in my life very, very differently, even if I was never taught how to do it.
Well, one, thank you for sharing that, Erin. And there's so much in that story you just shared. One, in terms of what happened to you and how you internalized it. I'll start there. I think what you're getting at is not just the event that occurred and the abuse that occurred, but then the response to that abuse and how,
Yeah.
you knew the abuse was bad. You knew it even in your 10-year-old self, which is in and of itself remarkable, because I think a lot of children your age maybe may not actually realize that what's happening is wrong or know what to do or what to say or how to say it. Two, I think this idea of when you did share something and you had the expectation of what you were hoping I think might happen, and then what ended up happening, which was this infighting, given how sensitive you were and how much you were hypervigilant of like your impact on people. I imagine some part of you was like, oh gosh, look at the chaos that I just created. Like,
Yeah.
look
Oh,
at the trouble that I'm
absolutely.
causing. Look at what I'm doing to my mom because now these people are saying these horrible things to her and pushing us out. And it sounds like you were then essentially pushed out of the family. Is that what happened? Where
You
you guys
know,
chose to leave, or was there some kind of exiling? Like how did that? How
yeah.
what happened there?
At that point, I will say this, and I'm again perhaps skipping ahead or relating to different things.
Yeah.
It's so important for me to share this story. It's a scary thing to do because in our society, victims don't get believed as an example that I shared here in my actual story, but also like in these moments where I'm retelling it, right? Like the way that trauma works, like you can't remember things.
Yeah.
Our brains
Yeah.
only give us as much information as is enough to like, I don't know, make sense of it. But the details of like what happened, when did this happen, before this happened, and like, it's not about like what I can prove in a court of law. That was
Yeah.
never what it was about. And I understand how difficult that is because you're psychologically unable to hold all of that like extreme amount of pain. So I just know that there was a period of time after that where we didn't speak to the family.
Mhm.
It wasn't as long as I needed it to be, but it was a period of time. And I think it was mutual. It was like you all, I think the story, what you said of what I took on as a 10-year-old, was both true and was what other people were saying was they caused this.
Yeah.
Erin caused this, it was my fault what was done. And, that's a lot to carry as a child, but also I think that was the convenient narrative was like they caused this. I think it was my grandmother's birthday that day. And I think to the end of her life, I think it was, they ruined grandma's birthday. They ruined my mom's birthday. I think it was a mutual thing. It was like we caused that and we were like, y'all were horrible. And so we're going to remove ourselves. With some exceptions, right? We still were in touch with certain people that were, supportive of me to whatever extent. I think it was very complicated. It's very complex. I think dysfunctional and meshed family units operate much like cults. I'm very fascinated with cults because of it. And it doesn't actually make sense. If I tell this story and, as we'll get further along, there's plenty of parts of my story that it's like, well, why did you do that? Like, that doesn't seem to make sense. And it's like, you can't really understand unless you're in it, right? And when you're in it, the messages that you're receiving, either implicitly or explicitly, are that we are a unit. This is how it is. All the other people that may not get it, like, they don't get it, but this is what's right, or this is what's like correct, And so at the time, it was, I think, very difficult for us to remove ourselves from that. We wanted to still be at the family gatherings, right? Again, talking about like 30, 40 plus people, and we get together. It's like, it's a thing, right? We'd have to rent halls and different things like that. And it was like when my grandparents had their 50th anniversary, like I wasn't there. There's pictures of the entire family and I wasn't there, And so it's like at a certain point, the pain of not being connected became bigger than like, oh, well, they didn't do right by us, or they didn't, they harmed us. I think it was just sort of so clear that there was never going to be an adult conversation about what happened or a real like repair, because repair didn't seem possible. So it was like the way that we dealt with that was to, I think, pretend like it never happened.
Which is another, I think, hallmark of those types of units and those types of maybe dysfunctional, emotionally immature units, right? Where you just are like, oh, yep, okay, moving on, for the convenient narrative, as you said, right? It's inconvenient to acknowledge this further. And even if they're not thinking that consciously, emotionally, it ends up being inconvenient, right? And so when that kind of thing happens to a child and you're trying to, like you said, make sense of it, you've internalized kind of your fault in all of this, or what the chaos you've caused. Children still have very strong survival instincts, right? And so they usually find something that they're good at or that they can do and really start to put a lot of weight and spend a lot more time on those things just to kind of maintain their sense of self, honestly, at that age. It's not conscious that they're doing it, but it just happens naturally. What was that for you, if anything? Like, what did you end up diving into, if anything?
Definitely school. I think I, of course, wasn't conscious of any of this, right? I just was, like you said, I think putting that language to it is absolutely right. I was trying to survive. I was trying to just be okay, and make it. And what's fascinating when I look back, and I think they're all intertwined, right? I believe that happened in around when I was 10 or 11, but I also at the same time moved schools. I moved from a school in Oakland, which was like 5, 10 minutes from the house that I grew up in. And it was very diverse. Literally, you could probably split a quarter Asian, a quarter white, a quarter black, a quarter Latino. And it was just like everyone. And we were just all there. And in sixth grade, at 10 years old, I started going to a school in Danville, California, which is, if you know anything about the Bay Area, very, very different than Oakland. It is an extremely affluent, very large percentage white community.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in sort of a private school program, like feeder program for bringing talented students of color to independent schools like that school. So I was there at 10 and I was the only Black kid in my class. And this is all happening at the same time. Like
Yeah.
it was a kind of overwhelming amount of change, I think, to go through, to like be removed from that school. That was what I grew up in, and also removed from the family that I grew up in. And so I think I just poured myself into the things that seemed to yield the best possible response in terms of like my safety, or what people seem to be happy about or congratulate me about. And I was
Mm-hmm.
always really good at school. And that's why I got into this school. And when I got to that school, you know, it was like, well, this is where I am. And I was also trying to survive there. Frankly, I was trying to fit in. I was trying to make friends. And so again, I think I was very sociable. I was very like funny and outgoing, even as I was, you know, sensitive. But I was just really focused on belonging more than anything. And school came naturally to me, like doing well. And so I liked doing things that I was good at. And so I poured myself into it. It was just like, I'm really good at this. And I think people seem to like it when I'm getting good grades. And I want for people to respond well to me, because I don't want to recreate anything like what I've been through. And so it was just like those two things kind of like were associated in my mind, is like doing well at school, which, oh, by the way, I'm already comes quite naturally, and being accepted, being, yeah, belonging.
What do you think that transition gave you in terms of perspective for your own life?
Yeah. I think it gave me a sense of, this is going to be two sides of the same coin, but it gave me perspective that I could do different things than anyone in my family. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be doing things differently than all of the people around me. And I also at that time was literally going from East Oakland to these very, very affluent communities, right? Like I think most of the people that would come to the school from the other parts of the Bay Area that were, you know, more diverse came in high school. And so when I came in sixth grade, it was really just like me and then all these folks that were out in this area. And so I was going to these houses that were like nothing like what I grew up in. And I was just seeing things that I was like, okay, well, people live like this. People have pools and houses that are this big and all of those things. And so I think I saw both, this is possible, this exists, I can be in these spaces, but I also saw that kind of in anywhere that I am, I'm not really sure how to really belong here. I'm not really sure if this is truly for me, but like nothing really felt like it was, right? Because being at home in that family that wasn't there for me and wasn't showing up for me, I'm like, I knew that there was some disconnect. And then being in this like idyllic, like basically utopia, right? It was like kind of like Stepford Wives, like that's how it
Yeah.
looks. I'm like very much the odd one out too. So it's like, yeah, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? And I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to this idea of being hypervigilant or being vigilant at all times of
Yeah.
your surroundings, who you were, how you were presenting, what you're going to do. And but at the end of the day, it sounds like school wasn't your actual priority. What was your priority at the time?
My priority was to find people that would, you know, finally accept me and
Yeah.
like me and be, you know, be kind, and like I
Yeah.
could just finally relax, right, a little bit, and like let my hair down a little bit. It's interesting thinking about that and thinking about that version of me. It's like she was trying to find that, and I don't think she ever knew what that really felt like. Like I don't think she knew what it was like to truly take a deep breath and relax. And I would call it hypervigilance. Like it was just this like always like, okay, I'm good, but like at any moment something could go awry.
Yeah. So it sounds like this experience, though, it gave you a sense of, okay,
Yeah,
things can be different, which honestly is
absolutely.
huge for someone who's in need of some hope in this moment in life, right? That this new school may not be exactly what that different thing is that I want for myself. It's still different. And it sounds like it planted a seed of hope. Um,
Yeah. A friend of mine led a meditation and it was about fairness. And we think about like, oh, this was so unfair and this
yeah.
happened and this was so unfair. And I think I shared a bunch of examples of that already, but it's also like thinking about the moments where it was like you maybe got something that other people didn't get, or you
Hmm.
got access to something, or you experienced something that maybe others might call an unfair advantage or a privilege. And frankly, me going to that school definitely was that, right? Like there was just so much like exposure to
Hmm.
things. And I think to your point of hope, like even as I was like, I don't know that I quite belong here, I was like, there is such a big world out here. There's
Yeah.
so many different kinds of experiences. And yes, I'm maybe a little bit still grieving the fact that 30, 50 people that it didn't really work out with, like that world wasn't the only world that exists. Like there are so many possibilities of what you can live like. And I've just got to create a way to find that for myself. I think that
Yeah.
seed was planted at
Yeah.
like 10, 12. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. Did this idea of achieving to belong kind of continue as you went to high school, college?
Yes, like it did. And I like looking back, I'm just like, I don't think I was that person that was like, I'm going to be number one because I've got to be number one. And I didn't have that sort of
Mhm.
competitive nature to me. It was more just like, I think I'm on this track. I think I can do it. And I think people like it when I'm doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it because I want people to like me because that's more safe. And so, yeah, I applied to 16 colleges, got into 13 of them. I had in my mind that I was going to stay in California for my entire life. I
Yeah.
thought maybe I'd go as far as LA. The three schools I didn't get into were the best schools in California. And I got into the Ivy League schools that I applied to on the East Coast. And I feel like God was telling me, you got to get away, right? You got to break out of this world that, yeah, was so small. This world that was my family unit as much as I was trying to, break out of it. We did go back into the family when I was in high school. And so that was a whole thing, but it was right before I left. And so it was like a year. And then it was like, okay, I now have even more distance, put more distance between me and that whole world. And so in college, we met in college. I went to Harvard undergrad. And for me, I feel like it was maybe the first place where I really felt like I really belonged. I
Yeah.
found friends who had more of a similar story that I did from they were the kids that went to those same, kind of high schools where they were the only, right? And so we then all ended up at Harvard and found each other. That felt just so nourishing to be around. And I found a community largely through dance. I was
Hmm.
part of a Latin hip hop dance troupe called Candela Hip Hop. That was like most of my friends from college were in that or part of that. I certainly still was achieving to belong, but I think, yeah, now that I'm connecting these dots, it's like I think that I let go of a little bit of the achievement at that point. Like I still wanted to do well because I was supposed to, and that was definitely the culture at Harvard. But because I had that sense of belonging, maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't striving quite as much. What is clear now, reflecting back on it, is that I wasn't really grappling deeply with the question of like, what do I want to do and what is safe for me to explore? And so that also translated into what I did after college, which I got a job in consulting. And my first job out of college was the one of the like top most sought after jobs that people had. And I was like, great, I've made it. Like I did what I was supposed to do because like this is gonna make everyone like me. Like I obviously didn't consciously say that. I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is a great job and I'm, making good money and all this stuff. But thinking back on it, I think I was just driven by again wanting to belong. So it was like that fine line of this is acceptable to people. This is something people really will cheer me on for. And so I want to do it. Right. And I actually thinking
Yeah.
back, it was one of those, it was like, okay. And I've been good at everything that I do. And I'm just going to be good at this because that's, I'm always good at things. And I was not. The go above and beyond all of the sort of things that they were telling me to do. I'm like, yeah, I've always done well. So I'm doing well here. And it sort of like crumbled, right? It just didn't work. And you're meant to, 2 or 3 years. And I got let go after 1 year because I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do, but like I just frankly didn't care about it to the level that I think other people did. And I didn't know what it truly took in order to meet the bar that was set out. It was just like, this is a new world for me, as
Yeah.
every world that I've existed in has been since I was 10 years old. I'm just navigating. And up to that point, what I had done and how I showed up was enough. But at that point, it stopped being enough. And so I think I was more heartbroken about not being in that class of 30 people anymore than I was
Yeah.
about the job. And
The
I
job
don't
itself.
know,
Yeah.
it's funny. I'm saying these numbers over and over again. It's like 30 people that I got removed from back then, and repeating itself again as an adult. I think there was so many times where I'm like, did I finally make it? Like, am I finally good enough? And then it was like, nope. And I think it was just an earlier lesson of when giving your power away or giving your sense of self away to these external markers, at some point that's going to fall away so that you can look in the appropriate, correct direction, which is within as opposed
Hmm.
to outside of yourself. So that's how I view it now.
Yeah.
But it was, such a big part of my journey that I think even after that was trying to sort of make up for.
Yeah. And I thank you for not only sharing with us what happened, but also your reflection on it. So were you on the East Coast this entire time
I was in the East
for
Coast
these jobs?
for, including college, this is 11 years, so 7 years in New York City.
Hmm.
So yeah, stayed on the East Coast. And then after 7 years, I decided it was time to move home. I think subconsciously it was time to like go face what I've been running away from. And
Yeah.
so I moved back to the Bay. So I lived with my parents for a year as I was applying to business school. I was also
Hmm.
trying to date at the time. It was very tumultuous. I didn't understand at that point in my life, at 28 years old, that the early childhood stuff directly impacted how you show up in relationships. And one of my favorite things to say, my favorite quote is like, wherever you go, there you are. Because it's like you are the same person in all of these environments and spaces, and you're just sort of repeating patterns everywhere that you are. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was, my parents have a lot of conflict and they have their own ways of relating to one another. And it was
Hmm.
highly triggering for me. And I didn't even understand what triggers were, but I was just like
Yeah.
irritable all the time. And so trying to date someone at that time, it was really challenging. And so as soon as I got into business school, so it was like a year, I moved out and I moved in, but I was still in the Bay Area, back reconnected with that extended family. And so it was
Hmm.
an interesting period of like slowly digging into some self-discovery and starting to understand how those early experiences were showing up. But I didn't immediately understand that they were connected and that they were related. I know very much now, but at the time I didn't.
Fair enough. So you're back at home. You still live in the same neighborhood. You're in touch with this family. Did you have exposure to the cousin who had initially abused you?
Yeah, cousins. Yes.
Cousins, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, we were just a big happy family
Big
again,
happy family
right?
again.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was something that I kept a secret. And I just want to say, like, for
Oh, okay.
myself, it is so powerful for me to be able to talk about this now and not be like
Hmm.
literally sobbing crying, because
Yeah.
back then I told, I think 2 or 3 people outside of my family even knew this happened. The silence has so much power, right? Because if I am only keeping it to myself or surrounding myself with people that have made it so that this is okay, then
Yeah.
I won't ever see anything different, right? And when I started to share this with people outside of that system, outside of that unit, is when it started to have those cracks. That choice to share my story was so powerful, because that's when I started to be able to see it differently and see that there is another way to view this. There's another possibility for how you might go forward. There were a series of moments where people were like, that doesn't sit right with me as a
Hmm.
person that knows you, that you're still in touch with these people, or like, are you sure that that's really what you feel comfortable with? And
Yeah.
I think for so long I had sort of taken on this mask or this performed comfort with these people that I was actually like deeply in my body was feeling unsafe and very uncomfortable around. But I just sort of like, that was my baseline. And so, one of the blessings of a relationship that ended up actually ending in a very painful way. But one of the blessings was I think that was the time where I really had a person say to me, you know, like, these people you're introducing me to, right? Like I introduced them to my family prior to telling them the deeper stuff. He was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to be around those people. And I'm like, well, you don't want to be around those people because of what they did to me. Like, it started to open up my mind to say, you have a point, and perhaps it's time for me to do the brave thing and say, like, I don't want to be around people that are being that way towards me either. And so I
Mm-hmm.
decided, as I mentioned, we had a lot of ritual, a lot of pomp and circumstance in this family. Every year we had a New Year's Day celebration. I decided I'm not going. I'm not going to show up because I don't want to participate in a performance that
Yeah.
is so false, that is so just artificial, is an image
Mm-hmm.
that we're projecting to the world to feel okay, but we are not right. We are not right within. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite quotes, Lauryn Hill lyrics, but it's just, I wasn't going to participate in that anymore. And so I decided not to go. That was the start. And there were a lot of whispers, there's a lot of comments.
Yeah.
My mom decided not go as well, but it was a slow like separation, and more things came out that, you know, were very, very hurtful. Other people experienced similar things to me
Yeah.
that, you know, didn't say anything until this stage in life, right? And so that was the end of that, actually. I went basically no contact
Mm-hmm.
with most of them. Yeah, and it was scary, but also like the best thing that I've done for myself as an adult, right? I think this is what I needed to do for myself to really be able to show all of those parts of myself that I was worthy of protection, I was worthy of safety, I was worthy of having comfort and ease and peace, and not feeling like I had to, you know, keep one eye open or like look over my shoulder all the time. It's been some years now, but I think it was what created the space for me to do the level of deep healing work that I have done. I think they say, you know, you can't heal in the environment that makes you sick, and I just had
Yeah.
to get out of it.
So all of this for you was sort of building, and you were reflecting on a lot of this. When you said you decided to leave your family, what did that look like? When did it happen? How did it happen? Did you physically go somewhere
Yeah.
else?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing was just like, I think it was a marker, a line in the sand was me not attending that family gathering, which is like
Yeah.
very, like it's a tradition. It's like
Okay.
everybody,
Yeah.
you know, unless you're out of town, you go, right? And so
Got it.
me deciding not to go was, I think, that biggest thing.
Hmm.
And it was, I think, what allowed me to finally just sort of like remove myself. This was also, mind you, like right before COVID, right? And so after that, there weren't many gatherings. I think that was probably maybe the last one before COVID. So two things I'll say in terms of that idea of repair and why I chose what I chose. There were moments where I had conversations that gave me the insight to know this is
Mm.
not possible,
Yeah.
right? This
Okay.
person is telling me enough, either if I was close enough to them to say, listen, this is what happened to me. And I don't know that you've heard directly from me that this is what happened. And I heard things like, oh, well, I'm just cool with everybody, you know, like those kinds of like
Mm.
wishy-washy things, and not like what I needed, which was again a line in the sand of like, you are right, that is wrong what happened to you, and what can I do to support you. Like I just didn't get that from people. I got a lot of like sympathizing with the other parties, right? And so I knew that was the truth, and so I needed to remove myself. And my grandmother, who I'm was deeply, deeply just so close with. What I didn't learn until after she passed was that I don't remember it, but that day of the event, that was her birthday that I ruined, right? Apparently, that when we left the house that day, she came out got in the car with us and said, I'm going with them. And,
When you were 10?
mhm.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't hear that. I didn't know that. Like, I don't recall that. And my parents told me that after she passed away. And I think that was maybe, you know, one of the moments where I think it allowed me a little bit more closure to say, like, I think I needed more from everybody. Like, I think there were people in the unit, the leaders of the family, that could have done more and said, listen, we're going to sit down and have this conversation. This stops now. Like, we're not doing this. And they didn't do that, you know? And I feel like from what I know, there were a lot of folks who felt like their hands were tied, but did know ultimately that they wanted to support me and maybe they couldn't as much, or they didn't
Yeah.
feel they could, right? And so I say that to say when my grandmother was, in hospice and on her way out, I was around everybody. I was
Yeah.
still, I'd already decided to remove myself, but I was still going to show up for her. I was still going to be there. So yeah, a lot of us, the folks that I'd already, maybe not intentionally engaged with for like
Hmm.
a couple of years, we were in the house together. And so
Yeah.
when she was no longer on this earth, I had no tie to Oakland anymore. I had no reason that I had to be there.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, I moved to Los Angeles. I just needed to get a little bit more space away from, where it all happened. I could fully just relax and take that breath that I was looking for. And I felt drawn to LA. I felt like, I love the sun, I love the beach, I love all of that. And I actually remember, the last frontier, I think there was like these sort of concentric circles, the folks that were
Yeah.
further away, like I'd already removed myself from those situations, but I was still in touch with my parents, and I'm still in touch with my parents. And we've been navigating a lot of this together. And I've, since worked through a lot of like their part of this journey with them.
Yeah.
And I was living in the house that I grew up in. I was renting for my parents. And so I felt this obligation to stay and to be near them. But after my grandma passed, I was like, I gotta go. It's time to go. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I was talking about something else, and she just blurted out, she's like, this is random, but I think Southern California would be really good for you. And I felt like that was her intuition, something saying like, you can go, like you got to do what you need to do for you. And yeah, I think my parents, they've had to navigate all this, and there's no playbook for this. I think it's probably the hardest thing that a parent would have to go through. I'm getting emotional thinking about them and thinking about, if I
Yeah.
am blessed with a child, like if I ever had to deal with something like that, I'm sure it's like the hardest thing to have to do. And I think they have really come a long way on this journey with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago, not even like 4 months after my grandma passed, I was in Los Angeles.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah. So
yeah,
you made that
yeah,
happen real quick. I feel like any person I've talked to, it's like when there is a sort of shift of gear in like their life and trajectory and sort of what they're willing to accept for themselves, like things start to happen quite quickly.
yeah,
And they can make things happen quite quickly because it feels like the right thing for them in that moment. And it just sort of starts to flow in that way. Not that it's always easiest, but it just kind of whatever obstacle there is, like you get through it. Like you make it happen. And so when you got to LA, then what?
when I got here, it was like part of me like birthing a new version of myself, but that process had started before I landed here. I don't think I would have left if I hadn't already been on my healing journey. Like I had this perception when I moved home that it was like, okay, I was on the East Coast for forever, and now it's time for me to be home and plant
Yeah.
roots and just be around my family. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's who I'm supposed to be. And so again, I talk about that relationship that was really tough. It ended pretty dramatically.
Hmm.
And also I had that one blessing of that nugget that, I think I really got the strength while in that relationship to remove myself initially from the family. And then afterwards, I think I got the blessing that was like, oh, I thought this was it. I thought this was the one. And it so wasn't. I found out about like infidelity, all these things, and I had never experienced that to my knowledge before. And so it was crushing in a way, but it also was what opened my eyes and ears, and I think my consciousness to the fact truly that seed that had been planted before, that was how you were brought up and your experiences early on shape all of your adult experience. I think that really became like very apparent was I've been making choices and choosing people that like I want to like finally love me, and I'm ignoring all the red flags and all the signs, right? I don't even want to get into like internet dating sort of language, right? And like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
people throw around like red flags and narcissists so much. And it was a very real experience of, yeah, there were moments in that relationship where I was like, this is not good, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, I want it to work. And so because of how much I was like, I thought this was finally it and I need this to be it, and it wasn't, I think it was like okay, girl, you've got to look at something else. Like, it's not just like get a new partner and maybe you'll like them and they'll like you enough. It's like your choices that you are making, your deeper stuff that I think was becoming also very apparent that I really needed to dive deep into and finally face and deal with. I remember having an intuition, and it's so telling now that I
Mhm.
was like, I think I'm supposed to like do more healing work before I find my person. Like I had that
Mhm.
thought, and I was like, but I guess I didn't have to. I found him. Here he is. And he was so not that, that
Yeah.
I was like, oh, guess I gotta really, okay, now it's time. So, it was 2019 and it went into 2020 pandemic. So it was like, I kind of glossed over the whole business school experience, but I was super social, super just like calendar full, always doing something, always pursuing, if not in a relationship, pursuing one. Like I was just always, because I couldn't just be still with myself, because what was underneath the surface was just like, as much as I mentioned how sensitive I was, like it was just waiting. It was waiting to be felt and experienced. So I was like running away from it constantly. And so when that breakup happened and I decided to really go within and go internal, 6 months later, the world shut down. And I was like, well, I was almost like, I was so fortunate. Just, I know there's so many things that happen. I don't even want to speak about like how devastating that was for so many people. But for me, I was like, all right, I welcome it. I welcome the quiet. I welcome the need to go internal. It was a whole almost 2 years after that I landed in LA. And
Mm,
so
okay.
I think this was all like kind of different parts of me like shedding, unraveling. I did a lot of somatic work to really heal from the early trauma that I'd experienced. I did that work for, gosh, 7 years because there was a lot to unpack and to move through. And so I think all of that is what allowed me to move to LA. I was also working a corporate job that allowed me to do that deep healing work and transform my personal life with some foundation for with a like a solid place to land. Like I was being paid well, I could cover everything, all the therapy, all the different modalities that I was trying. I also during that time
Mhm.
got a lot of support and realized like what I want to do professionally looks really different than what I've been doing. I was working in a gaming company doing brand management. That was the like what you're supposed to do after business school job that I got. And I knew very quickly it wasn't for me, but I think intuitively was like, well, it's good for now. It's stable enough. It's going to allow me to do the things that I need to do for myself.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I did a lot of this work and started to pursue professionally what I'm doing now. And it allowed me to do that. I had that sort of sense of safety as much as there was a lot that was problematic about that place. I think I was like, I can handle this. I can deal with this. I've been through worse, but it's giving me enough, like, sort of, this is the one constant in my life is
Yeah.
this job, and everything else. I'm leaving my family. I'm moving to a different city I've never lived before. I'm like becoming a new version of myself internally. And I was like, I'll leave the job. The job will stay the same and then I'll figure it out. So yeah, that's what was happening before and as I moved to LA.
Yeah. Wow. So it's like both very practically, financially, some part of you need to stay doing what you're doing because it's going to facilitate something in the future. When you got to LA, what are different things that you did there to kind of not just work on yourself, but to enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I think there was a period where like healing became my whole personality, and I was like, I can't be, I can't
It
be,
happens. Yeah.
like I'm just reading self-help books. That's it. That's all I do. No, I moved here and I had one really close friend that was already here, and then I knew some people in general. So I think I plugged into like her community, and I was really so grateful and fortunate to have some people socially. And so I think I was just like, I was the girl that was like, you invite me somewhere, I'm going, because like I'm here and I'm new and I'm trying to meet people. And I think it took me some time, probably 2 whole years, to really find like my people and not just like the people that I was connected to or happened to like meet. I just had a curiosity about going to a pole dance class, and I ended up going to this studio like 2, 3 times a week, and the same set of girls was going, and now some of my best friends are from that. And I think it really helped in terms of community, but also I think was so powerful for me, especially as a survivor, to reclaim that aspect of my sensuality, of my body, of my sovereignty as a person who, was always like feeling unsafe and looking for safety, right? I can't really talk about my LA experience without talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I left my job also. I left my
Yeah.
job in 2 whole years ago. So basically, I've been here 4 years. I was working part-time as a coach. I got my coaching certification and was really exploring that and what that would look like. Like I was funding all of this exploration for myself while I was in that corporate job. And I got a lot of support as well. Like I received coaching. I invested in coaching for myself. So I just was pursuing these things to figure out like, who am I in the world? How do I want to show up? How do I, ultimately take all of these experiences that I've had, some really, really challenging ones and some beautiful ones, sort of alchemize all of that into something where I can really have an impact on the world in a way that felt like unique to me, right? I think the work that I was doing, working in brand management at a gaming company, was not me at all. Like I'm not a consumer of that, but I understood why other people, I liked that other people were really excited about it. And so that was cool. But I also was like, this is somebody else's dream job. Like somebody wants this really, really bad. And it's not what I'm uniquely put on this earth to do. And I felt that I was starting to become closer and closer to what that was and to see it. And then finally, I think the biggest also shift is that I found my partner. And this all happened literally, I started pole dancing. I think it really helped like bring some like aliveness to my energy and to my spirit, honestly. And I connected with this group of people that was my community that felt really, really good. And I was making an exit strategy from my corporate job, like saving money. I froze my eggs. Like I took advantage of the benefits that I received and I was so, so fortunate to have.
Yeah.
And was honestly freeing myself, right? And so I made that plan and I had certain things that I needed in terms of readiness to feel prepared to go out on my own as an entrepreneur. I put my notice in the end of November.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, I matched with my partner on Hinge. And I tell that story because I feel like I was doing so much to become this new version of myself and clearing the space of the things that weren't aligned and the things that just didn't feel like me, that I think I like created sort of energetic space to welcome in. A partner is like a beautiful thing, but also like requires a big investment of yourself, of your time and your energy. And so I think I created that, right? I created the spaciousness for that. And so in that time, just it's been 2 years plus, I've just felt so grateful. And so just if anything about my story, right? It's like what I experienced before through that journey of alchemizing it, making sense of it, realizing like, oh, other people had a lot going on and maybe they were not equipped to show up for me the way that I needed them to and I so desperately wanted them to, but that actually never meant what I made it mean. It never meant that I wasn't worthy of receiving that. It's just like they weren't able to give it to me.
Yeah.
And yes, that was hurtful and I can grieve that and I can move through those emotions, but there are people out there in this world that want to connect with me. There are people out there in this world that want to see me and want to be there for me and that love me and will show me that in the ways that I've been desiring, that I've been searching for, right? With all of those ways I was looking for belonging. And I feel finally like I've found that and I've created that, right? And I've created the room for it and the ability to show up for people in ways that allows them to show up for me like in such a reciprocal and beautiful way.
Yeah. No, it really sounds like it. And I think you've created it and made space for it by, sure, for a moment, maybe healing was your whole personality. We can laugh about that now. But I think what you're getting at is that there are these phases of this whole process that you do have to take really seriously and that you do have to commit to and that you put the work into. And it's one where you're exploring, you're open to finding things out about yourself, which can be very scary, right? The notion of discovering something about yourself that you didn't before know is terrifying, which is why a lot of people just don't do it.
Yeah.
Now that you're in this place, you're a coach, you're building your business, you're an entrepreneur, you're showing up online, you pole dance, you're with your partner, you have a community you're building in Los Angeles. How would you describe yourself as Erin like now, today?
This version of Erin feels a lot of peace, a lot of safety that I create for myself. Feels so hopeful and joyful a lot of the time. This version of me is also just more willing to be with every part of me, and I feel more whole. Like, it's not that I have like reached enlightenment by any means, but I used to really push away and run away from scary feelings and fill my life and social calendar so that I could not have to feel them. And now my like first thing that I do is allow those parts of me to be here and create the room for them to express themselves to me first and foremost. And then I can decide who I want to share that with, who might be able to be there for me. I'm not outsourcing that and saying like, let me lob this over to you and see, am I enough for you to show up for? It's, no, I'm choosing, and I'm going to share this with people that I've already used my discernment to know want to be there for me.
Exactly.
And maybe they won't get it perfect, right? And I'm not using it as like a test, but I think I just trust myself, right? I trust that the folks that I have around me, the spaces that I'm in, the communities that I'm a part of want all of me and want to see all of me. And I have so much more to share and to give. And I'm really excited to be doing that through my work and through just how I show up as a human, personally and professionally, right? But yeah, this Erin feels just a lot more at ease.
Yeah. I love that for you. I know I'm just, after hearing more of your story, it warms my heart, makes me really happy to hear you so genuinely tell me how at ease you are. It's inspiring. It's inspiring in that it gives people hope. I think that feeling that ease is possible after feeling that hypervigilance, which is how we talked about so much of your childhood and young adulthood.
Yeah.
Erin, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for reflecting on the way you did. I learned so much. I've known you for a long time, but I feel like I'm so grateful I've gotten to know you better in the past, now I think year and a half. And so it means even more that you were willing to come on and share your story with us.
Yes, thank you, Gowri. I think it's just so beautiful how you are creating this platform to have people, encourage people to share their story in this way, right? Not in just a, here's the shiny things and here's the, highlight reel or the professional shiny version, but like the truth, like the depth, and we get all of it, right? So I just thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect on my own journey in this way. It's just been so beautiful, and so it's been helpful to be there for that version of me and to actually really sort of reflect on how proud I am of where I am today.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If it moved you, made you think, or made you laugh, please share it with someone you love. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at senseofself.podcast. That's the easiest way to stay in the loop when new conversations drop. We'll see you next time.